It's great to see all of you. I want to welcome you to the third, and sadly, this is the final session of the 2022 College of Health Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Symposium for this year. As we've done in previous symposia, I want to first acknowledge that we live and work on the lands of the Dena'ina people. They have taken great care of this land since time immemorial, and they continue to do that today. As I was preparing for today, I found it interesting to reflect a little bit on how the Dena'ina people valued diversity, equity, and inclusion in their own lives and in their work, at least until they were forcibly colonized. And unfortunately, through the colonization process, we replaced diversity with displacement and marginalization. We replaced equity with bias and injustice, and we replaced inclusion with racism and bigotry. That's clearly not a history that we can be proud of, and that is a history that all of us must work hard to change. But I do feel a lot of optimism because in addition to having the privilege of living and working on the lands of the Dena'ina people, I also feel very privileged to work in a college that is so committed to addressing these issues. And so I really want to thank all of you for joining us today. The topic for today is to create a culture of belonging. As you heard in previous symposia, that's a key strategy in the Alaska Native Success Initiative, or ANSI. But to me, it's really much more than that. As we begin to return to near normal operations, that's our goal for the fall, I am asking that we all renew our commitment to develop a culture of belonging, not just for students, but for faculty and for staff as well. I recognize that these last few years have been incredibly difficult, from earthquakes to pandemics to wars and lots of other issues. Unfortunately, over the last few years, we've experienced a lot of trauma, a lot more than we have in a long time. And sadly, because of our isolation, we often had to experience that trauma alone and by ourselves. So today, as we discuss a culture of belonging, I hope that we can keep that in mind. We need to acknowledge and understand the trauma that has occurred, and that many have experienced displacement and marginalization. Many have experienced bias and injustice, and many have experienced racism and bigotry. So that's why this work is so important. That's also why this work is, frankly, so difficult. But it is absolutely essential. And I am confident that we can make great progress on this. So I do open this last symposium for 2022 with a great deal of enthusiasm for the future work of the college, and also with a very sincere appreciation for all of you. So thank you for being here. Our first speaker today is Deanne Woodard. Deanne is the Associate Vice Provost for Targeted Programs and Populations. She provides leadership and direction for the UAA Learning Commons, the UAA Testing Center, TRIO Upward Bound, Educational Talent Search, Student Support Services, Military and Veterans Academic Success Centers, as well as support for dual enrollment across campus, and I know many other things as well. She has over 20 years of experience in higher ed in both student affairs and academic affairs. She is a native Floridian, but is excited to call Alaska home. And today we are excited to have Deanne join us for this symposium on creating a college culture of belonging. So thank you very much for being here with us this morning. And thank you, Deanne. We look forward to your presentation.
Wonderful. Thank you, Andre. I appreciate it. I want to say thank you for inviting me to be here and share some, hopefully some knowledge and some wisdom and some ideas and brainstorming opportunities. So let me first say thank you. And I too live and work on the land of the Dena'ina people. And as with everything that we do here in the whole state of Alaska, we always want to be conscious of the land in which we live and work on, and be appreciative for that. So thank you. I'm going to share my screen and I'll jump right in, and then we'll have some time at the end for some, I'll say Q&A, but really I think more discussion. All right, belongingness at UAA. I was asked to talk a little bit about a sense of belonging at UAA and why that matters for us. I appreciate you already telling everyone what the areas are that I work with, but I want to emphasize that my area of targeted programs and populations is really designed to think creatively. It's a new office. I'm an office of one as far as the immediate office, but I oversee areas that work with all students across campus. And it is an ongoing daily commitment to identify the needs of all of our students and create that sense of belonging when they step into the learning commons, when they step into the testing center, when they are engaged in the programs that are in the high schools, which are Upward Bound and Educational Talent Search, and student support services here on UAA's campus. For those that don't know, we're also writing for the TRIO Ronald McNair grant, which will encourage undergraduates to seek a doctoral degree, and we support them in that process, as well as Veterans Upward Bound. The unique thing about TRIO programs is that the primary audience are first generation or low income or marginalized communities. Those are the target populations for TRIO programs. So we are always in a constant state of evaluating ourselves, asking ourselves those meaningful questions around how we are interacting with one another and how we are supporting all students here at UAA. So can we talk a little bit? We're going to talk about belongingness and define it. Officially, sense of belonging is when an individual perceives, that's an important word, perceives that they are valued, accepted, needed, and fit into an academic, social, or work group or space. This is often facilitated by social interactions that are tied to a group setting. That's the technical definition of what belongingness means. And if we unpack that a little bit, one of the important words is perceives. It's how a student feels. Perception is reality, even if it's not true. If you keep that in the front of your mind, how someone perceives, even if it's not your intention to say or do something or make someone feel a certain way, if they do feel that way, then it's their reality. So keep in mind that we want to always strive to make everyone around us feel valued, feel accepted, and feel needed. I do want to say one more thing around the word accepted. There's a difference. A lot of times we'll hear on college campuses that we must, and when we have talks about diversity, that we must be tolerant of one another. Tolerant is not a word I would use. Tolerant just means I don't like you, I don't have to like you, but I have to put up with you. That is not a warm and welcoming feeling or sentiment. Accepted, on the other hand, means even if I don't understand, even if I don't agree, even if it's not a walk I would take, I accept who you are, what you are, and what you value. Right? So why does it matter? Why do we need to be thinking about this here at UAA? Students who feel like they truly belong, both socially and academically, whether it's in their majors, in their clubs, in their programs, and in the community, are most likely to succeed. Studies are being done all the time. They've been done since the early 70s around sense of belonging and the impact. Tinto's research shows that students who feel connected and a part of a university environment do better than those who don't. We wouldn't be having this symposium. We wouldn't be having these conversations if it was automatic, right? If it just was something that was. we have to make an effort and be intentional in our efforts to ensure that all students feel like they belong, because that's the way they are going to be able to succeed. So let's start by looking at who our students are. And I say, you'll see this a lot and you'll hear this a lot from me. Our students, our family, right? So nearly half of all of our students are an ethnic minority or Alaska Native, 43%. But when I walk around campus pre-COVID, because we know that COVID has changed a lot on campus in a whole lot of areas, not just with respect to diversity, equity, and inclusion, or who we see physically on campus. Pre-COVID, I didn't see 43%. I didn't see it when I walked around. And I certainly don't see it represented in our faculties and staff around campus in an equitable way that represents who our students are. They're clearly here. We're counting them. They are a part of our numbers, but where are they? And why are they not more present on campus? At nearly 50%, that means almost every other student we should be seeing would be an ethnic minority or an Alaska Native. We don't see it in the classrooms, and we don't see it when we walk around campus. Why is that? My guess would be they come, they take their class, and they go home. They don't feel connected to our campus, and they don't feel at home. Over half of all of our students are non-traditional. So when we talk about diversity, it's important for us to remember that diversity is not just the color of our skin or our culture, our ethnic makeup. Those are the more visible things, right? But it's more than that. It's more than that. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in a minute. But over half of all our students are non-traditional. By that, I mean they are 25 years of age or older. And they have a unique community as well. And then the true number of students with disabilities is unknown, as many choose not to disclose or go on undiagnosed. But they're still our students, whether we realize they have a disability or not. Oftentimes we think of students with disabilities as only the ones that we can see, the visible disabilities, right? But we know there's a plethora of students with invisible disabilities. And I prefer to say challenges, invisible challenges, right? That we don't see every day. And sometimes they let us know, and sometimes they don't. And even sometimes a person may not even realize that they have one of those invisible challenges. Connectedness. This is what I was talking about with diversity is more about our similarities than our differences. We spend so much time looking at how we are different, analyzing that, thinking about that, pointing it out. And the reality is we have far more things that are similar about us all than that are different. Now, that doesn't mean we ignore the differences. We should value them. We should strive to learn more about our individual students, make a connection. By that, I mean, we can't just go to class and teach our students and leave class and never have a one-on-one conversation. The more we take the time to truly get to know our students, the easier it will be to feel connected to them and for them to feel connected to us. And then we need to embrace our similarities. It's a notion sort of like Strengths Quest, right? We identify strengths and we play to those. We find ways to use those and maximize our potential while continuing to improve in the areas that we may need improvement, but we maximize our strengths, right? In this same way, we want to maximize and embrace our similarities. I don't know if any of you have flown on Delta Airlines, but they have their commercial that they go all before you can watch a movie on it. They show their Delta commercial, and I love it because it talks all about how we are more alike than we are different. And they show people from all over the world in different communities. They show them loving each other. They show them in relationships. They show mothers and daughters and fathers and sons. They show people from different religions. They show people with various forms of challenge, physical and challenges. And Everyone at the end of the day just wants to be loved, wants to connect and feel secure in their space and when they step into another space. And I think if we begin to look at each other for who we are as humans, that sense of connectedness will form at a much more rapid pace. We must create a space for everyone, for all people that walk on our campus. Belongingness, diversity, equity, inclusion do not manifest just because we say we have it or that we value it. We must live it, we must be it, we must show it every day, everywhere. So one of the things that I tell myself, and I tell anyone who will listen really, is to take time and think about how you would want to be treated. Take a moment. Don't just be knee-jerk. Don't just respond to a moment. If you just pause for just a second and think, how would I want to be treated? You will more likely be able to interact with the person in front of you in a much more meaningful and a much more kind and generous way, as opposed to just responding quickly. No one's saying that belongingness and creating belongingness is easy work. It's not. It's intentional work. So we have to be conscious of everything we say, everything we do. I'll give you an example. When you call yourself dieting, and I say call yourself because that's what it is for me, when I call myself dieting, right? The only time I'm able to have any real success is when I am conscious of every bite of food that I put in my mouth. Now, that doesn't mean that I absolutely take things off the list or that I won't eat certain things because I said I can't have it, but rather before I eat whatever it is I'm going to eat, I think about, one, how many calories is this? Two, am I gonna feel bad after I eat it? Is it gonna make me feel sad or that I ate this big old piece of chocolate cake that I want? Should I eat half the cake? Should I eat only a bite? Should I leave it alone? I think about what I eat. And then the decisions that I make after that are determined once I've thought about it, right? I'm conscious of it. Now, I might still eat that cake, but I took the time to think before I made a decision about how I was going to interact with it. And that's the same thing we have to do when we are interacting with people around us, especially if it's not natural or for us as individuals. Some people are very introverted and don't talk a lot anyway. Or you may be having a really, really, really bad day and you don't feel like being bothered. And I'm just keeping it real. We're talking about the realities here. You're not happy every day. You're not even in a positive space every day, right? And how you feel can oftentimes be reflected on someone else. So what you want to do and what we want to do and we should do every day is just before we interact with somebody, take just a moment and think before we say whatever it is we're going to say or do whatever it is we're going to do. Again, we have to live it and we have to be it and we have to show it. So how do we ensure that everyone feels welcome, wanted, valued, accepted, and needed? That's a tall order. That is a really, really tall order. But there are a few simple steps that if we do this, I think we can get pretty close to being able to accomplish it just about every day. The first one, be intentional. You have to be intentional. The work is not easy. In some ways, it's not natural, especially if you're dealing with someone you don't know or a culture you're not familiar with or something that makes you uncomfortable. So we have to be intentional in our efforts to think about how we are treating others. Be open. Be honest with yourself. Be open with one another. Be able to allow for safe spaces and dialogue, right? Don't hide what you feel, but there's always a way to communicate that without being offensive. And if you accidentally, and I'll say accidentally, because sometimes we don't even realize we've offended someone in a moment. It may not be intentional at all. But if it's pointed out to you or when it's pointed out to you, be gracious, be open, don't be defensive. Accept what's being told to you and learn from it. Be sincere and genuine. Basic, be sincere and genuine. When you interact with someone, I guarantee you, the same for you, if someone's interacting with you, you know if they're sincere and you know if they're genuine or if it's fake or if it's just, I have to say this because I'm required to say it. Be authentic and be sincere in your interactions with others. Be thoughtful and considerate. This act alone will ensure that you will be careful in how you interact with other people and how you make other people feel and how they make you feel as well. Don't always jump to the worst conclusion. Assume the best intention, and perhaps someone just doesn't know or they aren't aware, and be willing to educate. Don't make assumptions, right? We don't want to make assumptions about anyone or any situation, because we may only have half the story, or a person may not have shared who they are as a whole person with you yet. You don't know. So be careful. Don't make assumptions. Ask questions. Be inquisitive and engage. Go the extra mile. Demonstrate care and compassion. When all else fails, if you show someone that you genuinely care about their well-being and you show compassion when they struggle and you try to help, that will take you a long way, and it will work towards making someone feel that you care about them, they are wanted, they are valued, they are accepted and needed. So 5 practices to help us create a sense of belonging on campus and online. And I say online as well, because as we know, COVID has shown us that a great many of our students do want to continue taking classes online. But one of the biggest complaints we got from students forced to go virtual was that they lost that sense of connectedness to the campus, if they did have it, and or it just felt so distant and removed. But maybe online is their best option in terms of flexibility. So they need to continue. So as we think about belongingness on campus, we want to make sure we include our virtual and distance learning platforms and opportunities that students will be engaged in. So number 1, we have to meet students' basic needs. This is the number 1 thing that will help create a sense of belonging. If we don't take the time to understand what students' basic needs are and then work to support those or assist them, then we failed. Students' basic needs are food. They have food insecurity, they can't focus on school. Housing, they have to be able to have a secure place to live. And we need to understand what's going on in students' lives. It may be employment, their financial situation may be rough. If it's too expensive for them to go to school and they don't have a way or can't see a way to pay for school, then it's not going to be a priority for them. It's going to create more stress for them. And they may have childcare needs. Our students, many of them, the majority of them are over 25. They may have families, they may have children and that they need to take care of. They may be forced to go online because it's the only time they can do the work, but maybe they're not very strong online. They may not have a hotspot, strong internet access, or the computer needs, digital needs that they may not be being met. So we have to be conscious of students' basic needs. And as an institution, we are obligated, I feel, to ensure that we are doing everything we can to help students meet those basic needs in order to be able to focus on school and be successful in the classroom. 2, keep students informed using various forms of communication. Another big complaint and that feeling like no one cares is when we try to communicate with students using one way. If we only email, or if we only have these robocalls going, or maybe a phone call. We have to recognize that our students run the gambit, right? We have fresh out of high school, some in high school students, and we have students who are much older and at a different place in their lives who maybe don't want to be engaged a whole lot on the computer. So we have to think critically and intentionally about how we communicate with our students. And we need to use different means. We cannot rely on just one, and we have to keep trying. We can't say, well, it was sent you an email and that was the end of it. We need to email. We need to put things on our website. We need to put things on social media. Many of our students live and breathe on social media. And Facebook is for us old heads. Some of our younger students don't use Facebook. Their preferred social media is Instagram, Snapchat, and TikTok. So we may need to think about how we communicate to our students, whatever it is we need to communicate to them, and make sure we're using many different forms of communication to keep them in the loop. The third thing we can do is use peer mentors and our student leaders to cultivate a sense of community. Now, I title them peer mentors, student leaders. Call them whoever you want, but they are their peers. And support the student organizations, the peer mentorships, the opportunities for students to connect with other students who look like them, who have similar interests as them, who come from the similar backgrounds. Those are the kinds of things that allow for students to feel a sense of connectedness and be intentional in that, in reaching out and be consistent. A lot of times we start things, we start programs, it starts out strong and then it kind of fades away. So if we make a commitment to doing something, there has to be the follow through. There has to be the follow up, and we have to make sure that we're constantly reaching back out and connecting students with resources and not just telling them where to go, but being engaged in that process. 4, give students ample opportunities to share their experiences and demonstrate they are heard by following through with appropriate support. The one word for this practice is listen and then act. Okay, listen and then act. We want to make sure that students are given a safe space to express themselves. They have to be able to share their unique experiences without judgment, without blame. They have to be able to speak their truth and speak truth to power, right? And demonstrate that they are heard by following through with appropriate support. So it's not enough for us to say, okay, tell me your story, and then we continue on business as usual. We have to listen to what they have to say and then act accordingly. We need to set up what they need to be successful. Not what we think they need, but what they are telling us they need. And 5, increase collaboration to ensure that students are at the center of all decisions. We can't work in silos. We have to be talking and we have to be working together. Our faculties in the classroom, our administrators in the dean's office and in advising and in student affairs and all of the student services that we provide for students, we need to all be talking about what we are doing collectively to create a sense of a belonging for our students. And we can collaborate. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. We don't have to work independently. We should be working together and including the students' voices and making sure that they are at the center of every decision we make, whether it's about how much a class is going to cost, whether it's about how much a book is going to cost, whether it's about what kind of program we want to offer and how students will receive it. It doesn't matter what it is. Every single decision in an institution of higher education should be made with the student at the center of that decision. We are family, the Seawolf. So something for you to consider as you embark on this journey to continually improve your efforts around diversity, equity, and inclusion. Think about, how would you treat your parents? How would you treat your siblings, your child, your relatives? And how would you want to be treated? And I'm pausing because I want you to really think about that. Really think about what that would mean to you. And if you just take 2 or 3 seconds and always think about that before you interact with anyone, it will make a world of difference. It takes all of us working together to create a sense of belonging. I can't do it by myself in my office, in my programs, nor can you do it by yourselves in your individual programs and services. We have to work collectively. We have to see this as it taking a village to make this work. and to truly, truly make everyone feel welcome, wanted, accepted, and needed. We are UAA, all of us, and we have to do it together. So thank you for that, and I would happily open the floor to discussion, thoughts, ideas, questions.
Well, thank you very much, Deanna. I was busy writing notes. I'm hoping that we could get a copy of your presentation because there are lots of very powerful slides in there.
You have it.
Oh, great. Thank you.
I have a question. Well, it's kind of a question comment. First of all, thank you for that wonderful presentation. It's wonderful to meet you and learn what all your office is doing. I appreciate that introduction. So this might be a good go-to place for me now. But I teach in health sciences. I have a course that we're going to rename. It's medical sociology right now, but it's a lot about intersectionality and cultural competency and things like that. And one of the things that I try to emphasize is that you don't teach cultural competency. People, when students are first dealing with, they go, oh, we would just have an education training on this. And it's like, and they would learn cultural. It's like, you don't learn. It's like you said, you're continuously working. So that's the point that I try to get across to the students. And we have some exercises that we work on there. So this is my long-winded way of asking. I have students in particular situations, and some of those things that you talked about were exactly true. I'm online. I hate it. I've got 22 students online in this seminar type class, okay? And that's a difficulty. I put them in break rooms and stuff. We do some small group stuff, which is great. But I have had students during classroom discussion that will monopolize the conversation, kind of like I'm doing now. And and you try to get other people involved. And one of an instructor's go-to comments is, okay, Barbara, let's let somebody else answer this time, or thank you for those comments, but I made a statement like that to a student. And she let me know afterwards that she felt humiliated because I had made that statement and sounded like I was telling her to shut up and that she didn't matter. And I was like, yeah, of course I did not intend that whatsoever. I was just trying to get other students to partake in the discussion instead of her being, the one answering all the questions. So I did apologize, and said, I am so sorry. And I actually made a comment in the next class to say, when I say this, this was my intention. I do not mean to discount anyone. And so I'm not going to say that anymore. I'm going to use some other way. So that was an example that I heard, when you were bringing these things up, that you don't intentionally do stuff. You need to own up to it, whether you intended to or not. And so hopefully I handled that okay.
You did beautifully. And I want to stress to everyone that there's not always an exact right way in a situation. And it's not necessarily wrong when you say or do certain things. Like in this situation, it wasn't that was per se wrong. It goes back to perception, right? That perception is reality for that individual. And you did exactly what you should do, is acknowledge it and say, okay, when it's brought to my attention, explain that it wasn't your intention and work towards another way of getting the same message across now that you are aware that that was how it was perceived. And as humans, that's all we can ever really do when we intentionally or unintentionally offend someone is have the courage to admit it or accept it when it's pointed out to us and work to make it better, acknowledge it, make amends, and try to make it better. I also want to note for everyone that as a reminder, we will never, ever, ever make everyone happy. We will never, ever please everyone. And we will probably never, ever, ever be able to predict how someone's going to receive something we say. So don't beat yourself up for that or spend so much time in contemplation. Notice every time I said to think before you do something, just take a second or two. You don't have to contemplate for days and hours over this. You know, it's really just about being conscious of and being aware. We go through life every day without even thinking sometimes. We're getting our routine, we're in our bubble, we're around the people we're around, not necessarily because we don't want to be around someone else, it's just who we're around. It's our people, you know, who we hang out with, the people we know. Oftentimes, and very natural, they look like us. They share similar things. Some folks, their families are very diverse and intercultural, right? And other families, they're not. Everyone in their family looks like them. So it's not that any of that is wrong. It's not. It's just about when we come together at an institution and we are charged with supporting our students who come from all walks of life, right? All ages, all genders, all sexual orientation, all disabilities or challenges, racial, ethnic backgrounds, cultures, experiences, because that in and of itself is another thing that it is a part of diversity, is our lived experiences. They're different. Some things we share with one another. You know, there's even the idea that, you know, if we all are rooting for Seattle Seahawks, so everyone who's a Seahawks fans, we have a community, right? There's a group of us that relate to the same thing. So again, don't beat yourself up. It is a continuous improvement. It's something we just need to be conscious of. And that's the first step in the process, right? And you are so right. We can't teach it per se. It is a feeling, but it starts with a consciousness, right? That consciousness is how we begin to lean towards change and embrace others. And we won't get 100% buy-in from everybody, but if we are all conscious of it, then we are aware and we're thinking and we're making better choices in how we interact and how we include everyone, whether it's faculty, staff, or students.
Thank you. I think we may have to stop with the questions at this point, but we really appreciate your presentation. Thank you so much.
You are most welcome. Thank you for having me. Take care.
Thank you. Melissa?
Hello, everyone, and it's great seeing everyone here. My name is Melissa Klupach, and I am an assistant professor in the dietetics and nutrition program and part of the symposium committee. So I want you to get your thinking caps on right now, get that coffee or tea out or water, stay hydrated, and let's get those creative juices going. And we're going to use Jamboard right now. And don't worry if you've never used Jamboard before, I'll guide you through it. In the chat, I've put the link to our Jamboard questions, and I will share my screen so everyone can see those questions. All right, can you see the Jamboard? All right, I see people popping in to Jamboard. That's awesome. All right, so we have a few questions that we want to get answers to. The first one is, what are we doing to create a sense of belongingness to the College of Health and UAA? Our second slide question is, how can we support a sense of belongingness for students statewide? And then our third and final question is, what are the barriers to creating a sense of belonging for students? So how do we operate this Jamboard? What I want you to do is go to the sticky notes right here. You can select whatever color you want. I'm a blue type of sticky note person, and my idea for creating a sense of belongingness is our dietetics program is online. So we use a lot of discussion boards. So in the, and this is related to what Deanne was talking about earlier. And I want to thank Andre and Deanne for amazing, great presentations this morning. So again, in relation to Deanne's presentation, so discussion board response posts to classmates should be respectful, if I could spell, kind, and we want to create a safe environment. So that's just one that I thought up real quick. I'm sure all of you have many ideas, and you can put numerous sticky notes, and you can even move. I'm going to move sticky notes around. All right. Oop. And you can make them a little bit bigger so people can see. All right. So they're popping in. That's awesome. Does anybody have any questions in terms of Jamboard before we get started with our next, with our panel, looking at focusing on faculty and staff perspectives on belongingness? Looks like all of you are pros with Jamboard. This is awesome. And at the end of the symposium, we'll come back to this and look at the sticky notes and do a summary. Sound good?
Sounds good.
Thanks, Yvonne. Thanks, everyone.
All right. So for my section here, I am going to be talking with staff about different thoughts that they have on belongingness and how we can encourage that within our UAA campus and culture. So let's see. Who do I have who is going to be here for this section? Was looking for, is Meredith here? Yes, there's Meredith. Okay.
I think Shauna Lee is joining you as well.
And there's Shauna Lee. Okay, awesome. All right, so thank you both for being here. I have some questions for you. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Vincent Foyer. I'm actually a student here at UAA, and I get to put some of the staff kind of on the hot spot for us. So it'll be fun. So I just have some really simple questions, or at least what I hope are going to be simple questions for folks. And I'm going to go ahead and jump in. And of course, I do want to say thank you for both of you coming and joining here and being willing to answer some questions for us. So first one for you is, what do you feel is the biggest contribution to belongingness for others at UAA?
Can you repeat it for me one more time, Vincent?
Yep.
Meredith may need you to repeat too.
Yep. So what do you feel is your biggest contribution to belongingness for others at UAA? So not just yours personally, but your departments. Yeah.
Meredith, you want to hop in there, or do you want me to go first?
Either way, I'm also just noticing that my pronouns are missing, but I also use she, her, hers. Not sure why Zoom took that away from me. Shauna Lee, totally up to you. I'm prepared, or you can go ahead.
Well,
go ahead.
I was going to say that it might be helpful for there are a lot of you in the session that I know, and I'm really glad to see so many familiar faces. But for those of you who don't know me, my name is Shauna Lee Whitney, and as you can see from my name under there, just like Meredith was just saying, I use she, her pronouns. I am a 27-year member of the UAA community. I've been a faculty member for a very long time. I've been teaching in higher education since 1986. And in addition to that, my path, communication is my discipline. So lots of things that we're thinking about here are really at the heart of my discipline. But in addition to being someone who is a faculty member, I also have a background in student affairs and have been super active in student affairs early in my academic career, and have also coached co-curricular activities like speech and debate and Alaska Native Oratory Society, and been an advisor to a lot of student clubs and organizations. So I kind of have I'd say I've been involved in a lot of different realms of higher education. And most recently, since 2013, I've been doing a lot of administrative work in higher education. And I am the Associate Vice Provost for Faculty Development and Instructional Support at UAA. And a lot of people don't have familiarity with the term faculty development. What happens in K-12 education is that people become an expert in a discipline, like math, for example, or history, and then they do a master's that teaches them how to teach, right? So they earn a degree that teaches them about education. In higher education, people become deep disciplinary experts, right? They go into, an undergraduate program, a master's program, a PhD program in biology or social work or whatever their field happens to be, whatever their passion is, focusing a lot on research, focusing a lot on getting deep, 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 sometimes into tiny little corners of a discipline, which I'll talk about in a second, because I think that connects to this issue of belonging. But in the vast majority of cases, they've not necessarily been taught to teach, right? They've not had support around how does pedagogy or andragogy, the teaching of adults, work, and how does learning occur? And people who have gone through all these levels and getting graduate degrees and so on are really good learners themselves. So sometimes they have learned, maybe in spite of the ways that things have been, taught to them or the experiences they've had, because they had such a passion for the topic. So my area, faculty development, is all about supporting faculty to become more and more effective teachers, to become reflective teachers, to become teachers who can provide a space, a learning space that is equitable and inclusive and hits all the right marks in terms of competencies that need to be developed and so on. I would say how my area focuses on belongingness and providing that. It is at the heart of what we do in my area. It is the bedrock of our work, right? The Center for Advancing Faculty Excellence, which was our first faculty development center at UAA, was really growing out of projects around how can faculty share with one another the good ideas that they have, the things that are working in their classrooms, to ensure that students are learning and that they're having a good connected experience, that they're doing the things we all want to do in higher education. And so for over 22 years, this center that I lead and the effort, the larger unit that I lead at the university, has been all about belonging, and not only belonging for students, but for faculty and staff as well. Now, our focus is largely on faculty because that's the dimension of the work that I'm in. But being connected to others, if we're not able to bring our whole selves to the equation, we're not going to have a good experience, right? We're just not going to have a good experience. So how we do it specifically, I would say that we do tons of programming, between 60 and 80 different workshops and programs an academic year that are open to all faculty, 1,100 faculty across the entirety of UAA. Many of our programs, depending on the topic, are also open to staff members, although not all. Some of them are specific to classroom kinds of situations. And there are even areas where we have public events where students, staff, faculty, and members of the community are able to attend. One really good example that's current for this year and for next is we have a long-running program called Books of the Year that we partner with APU on. And the theme that we're exploring this year and next is Healing What Divides Us. And we have a collection of 6 books that all focus on different dimensions of reaching across the divide. And there are lots of different things that divide people, but where do we find the spaces that we can we can connect with one another and the commonalities that we share. And as I said, communication is my discipline. So this is at the heart of my discipline too. So I would say between programming and learning communities and just our general attitude, the ethos that I try to have in my particular unit, we try to be welcoming, supportive, and just, you know, allow people to be themselves in the spaces that we occupy. And then the last thing I'll mention, and it's probably actually a really great connection to Meredith, is that I'm a member of the UAA care team. I'm the academic affairs rep on the care team. And so I still, even though I work more in academic affairs, I still have that foot in the student affairs realm. So that's something that my area is all about.
Nice. Thank you. Meredith, what do you have to add on to that?
I should probably also introduce myself since I do not recognize many names. So my name is Meredith McIntyre. I am entering my 15th year in higher education administration, which is weird since I'm 21. I don't know how that math works, but I've spent half in advising, half in residence life. So I have kind of a student affairs, academic affairs blending background. I've also taught UNIV 150 for many, many years. And so, yeah, what we have done, I think the thing that I would highlight the most is over the last 3 years in residence life here at UAA, we have developed a residential curriculum. So we determined an educational priority, learning goals from that, implementation strategies, and that's something that we as professional staff and our student staff use to engage our students, teach our students, and the cornerstone of that, the educational priority, the goal that we want our students to walk away from after living on campus. So answering that question of why live on campus versus elsewhere. Well, it's a great place to put down those roots and have that sense of belonging and really start to grow, right? But it's not just enough to say that or to have that be the goal. We really wanted to work on this and get it to a point where we were very intentional in what our programming was looking like to our students, what our support was looking like, our conversations, our student staff have educational goals conversations with residents each semester. The professional staff check in when students are falling below a certain GPA. But that's just one piece, right? That's just the academic piece, which obviously is very important. That's why our students are here. That's why we're here to support them. But it had to be more than that. And so this was implemented this fall. And like I said, we've been working on it for 3+ years, going back and making sure that it was really what we wanted it to be. And so that educational priority that we came up with, paraphrasing it, is, you know, we want students to be socially responsible and we want them to be positively connected to their communities. And so off of that, some of the learning goals was making sure that students first develop this understanding of their own identity and their impact on the community, and then also giving them these opportunities to be able to understand other cultures, other identities, their perspectives, and being able to work with our students to develop the skills to come up with proactive approaches to dealing with injustices. And so we have a lot of programming that is around that each month. We have a staff position that's dedicated to that. But I think that is the most recent large impact we've tried to have on our student population and residence life, of having this sense of belonging, having this connectedness. You know, we even say in one of our learning goals, out of a sense of belonging, students will utilize their education to make positive and innovative contributions to their communities. So that is always on the forefront of our mind as well.
Thank you both. So I'm going to kind of put you both on the spot with this next question, or at least that's my hope. We always look at things where we have very positive answers, very positive results. And I think this is a positive question as well, depending on how folks want to look at it. But what do you see as the biggest need or the biggest area to improve the sense of belonging on campus? Hopefully that'll be one that actually makes you think a little bit.
Yeah, my mind's going different places with this one.
Well,
just different ideas that I'm having, but Can you say it again? Because now I've talked and forgotten.
So what do you see as the biggest need or area to improve to work on the sense of belonging on campus for UAA?
Mhm.
Want to think a minute, Meredith, and I'll hop in. I actually have this one.
Yeah, go for it.
I believe that there are a number of really excellent things that are going on in a variety of places. This symposium with College of Health is a perfect example of that. We've now, hired a chief diversity officer. Michelle Yashmaneff, Dr. Yashmaneff is in her new position with a focus on Alaska Native issues and so on. There are a number of really good efforts that are the fruition of many years of work and advocacy by lots of people, right? What I don't think we have just yet is something that that ties that together in a, I'm not saying it's like this overarching thing. I guess I would say that it's almost like a thread through, if that makes sense. And the thing that I believe is really essential, particularly after the pandemic, but I'll talk about that more in a sec, is trauma-informed work. And in my area, there has been, in K-12, there's been, a sense of what does it mean to be a trauma-informed teacher and so on for a pretty long time. I would say that that's, pretty standard in K-12 education anymore. And many of us, I see lots of nods, right? People know that term. They're like, oh yeah, trauma-informed, of course. Being trauma-informed in higher education, I think is fairly familiar with a lot of people in student affairs. It is less familiar with folks in academic affairs. And they're going into the pandemic, like right in the first few months of that, when people were like running to online courses with their hair on fire, that kind of moment. There were several people in higher education who came forward, stepped right into that space and said, let's talk about trauma-informed pedagogy and what it means and why it's important in this moment. And the fact that there are many different dimensions of our higher ed community, students from various populations, experiences, and so on, that are experiencing this at a higher level or a deeper level, if we want to use the other direction, because they already have intergenerational trauma, cultural trauma, just a whole range of different experiences, right? Everything that we bring to the institution as whole people. So in faculty development, I have shared webinars that have been available out there, work by someone named Dr. Mays Imad. Dr. Imad is at Pima Community College and is an exceptional resource in faculty development, about what it means to adopt trauma-informed pedagogy, teaching and learning practices in higher ed for adult learners, right? I have also, based on what I saw in that work and my own, work at the institution, I have also developed workshops on trauma-informed academic leadership that I have delivered for chairs and directors of academic departments across UAA. I believe that thread through, whether it is, trauma-informed practices in specific clubs and organizations, even familiarizing our own student population or whatever, anybody who doesn't know that term needs to be familiar with that term, because at the heart of being trauma-informed is understanding people come into an experience as a whole person with all the baggage that comes with them, both good and bad. And I really feel like that's a thread through that is not only going to be, it was important before the pandemic, it's going to be doubly important after the pandemic. So that's what I think.
I agree. That's some really good points there. And Meredith, what are your thoughts?
I think mine is in line with what Shaunalee was saying. It just isn't going to sound as fancy and educated, perhaps.
I've been thinking about that one for a while, Meredith.
With research backing, it's more, as I'm thinking about the question, as I've been thinking about the symposium, the first thing that I think of is we have to get to know our students, and we have to give our students the opportunity to share their story, just to hear everyone's voice. And so, creating those opportunities to do so, whether it's in the classroom, on campus, obviously is my passion, through their co-curricular activities, whatever it may be, but giving them an opportunity and really listening. We can say that we provide opportunities, we can put on programs, but having that intentionality behind it where we're really wanting to hear, what is it that led to what's your college journey? How did you get to be here? And now what are the struggles that you are working to overcome? I think UAA, everyone on this Zoom understands that we have students who are working full time and supporting families and coming from backgrounds that were maybe not, families that weren't as supportive as we would hope for them going to college, or they could be sending money home to families. There's so many different things that are going on uniquely with our students that isn't necessarily happening at other institutions. And so really understanding the UAA student and what it means to be a UAA student, but again, those individual stories and understanding that, it's not every student is going to get to that sense of feeling a belonging or connectedness to the institution, to their classmates, to their college, without really understanding how they've come to be here and offering that individualized support.
I think both of you had some really great points and thoughts on that one. Thank you very much.
Can I share the name of a book here, Vincent? Do you mind?
No, go for it.
So there is a book that I want to highly recommend. In fact, if I can get this to come through before the end of the semester, I'm going to put it out as a possible summer reads kind of thing. It's a book by, oh shoot, I'm going to miss one of the authors. The first author is the one I'm going to miss. Peter Felton is the author that I've seen speak several times. It is a very recent publication called Relationship Rich Education. And the whole point of the book, there are 4 principles that guide the discussion in the book and so on. The whole point of the book is that relationships drive success in college for students, no matter what their background is or whatever. And so the very thing that Meredith is saying, tell us your story, want to sit and talk with you, need to get to know who you are, what you bring to the equation, why you're here, right? All of that is about building that fundamental connection, right? A human connection. So I strongly recommend Relationship Rich Education by Peter Felton and the person I can't remember. I'll see if I can look that up. But we do have a copy of it in the consortium library. And what I'm trying to do is thank you, Leo Lambert. That's right. Thank you, Andre. I appreciate that. And what I'm trying to do, and I'll find out, I may be able to find out even by the end of the day because I have an email in about it. I have put funding toward an unlimited e-copy of the book. So we should have multiple copies available to us, not just the one copy at a time. It would make a great, if you wanted to do a book group in a department or something like that, I really hope people will read that book.
So thank you very much for sharing.
Yeah.
Okay, next question. If you could share with students and staff one thing about belonging at UAA, what would it be?
One thing about belonging.
I'll go first this time, Shanali.
Okay.
So I think what I would share with students is take advantage of the opportunities to be able to have a connection with faculty and peers and staff, and to understand their stories, to share yours, put yourself out there. I guess, we always say safe space, but, also there's brave space, and so being willing to take that leap to try new opportunities while in college, I think is a huge contributor to feeling like you are really a part of the community, which can be difficult for, again, going back to our students who maybe are coming to school and then have to leave right away, so really taking advantage when you're in that classroom of listening to others and sharing with others as often as you can to be able to kind of forge that relationship with your peers and be able to share information and ideas.
Yeah. I think I have, it's kind of different messages for students and for folks who are faculty and staff. On the student side, I would say we collectively, all the, the folks that you interface with in various offices or classrooms or whatever, we know that sometimes you might bump up against a negative experience. That you have a run-in with a fellow classmate, somebody says something that's inappropriate or does something inappropriate. Sometimes those things may be intentionally hurtful. In other cases, it may be something that's careless, right? Somebody doesn't realize the damage that they've done or that they're doing. We know that those things happen, but I would want students to know that they do belong. Every student brings their, I've used the whole person idea, there's a lot of research starting to emerge on whole person education and so on, WPE. And so I want students to hear and to know that when we say we're an open enrollment institution, we are. And that doesn't necessarily mean that every single student could get access to every single program. You still have to, maybe get in through an admissions process to a particular major or something like that. But that doesn't mean that there isn't a place for you at UAA, and that members of the advising staff or student affairs staff or a faculty member or whatever, the very things that Meredith is saying, connecting with those people will help you figure out what is the right option or the right path. And I would go so far as to say that it's not only about belonging. I believe with my whole heart that there are people, that I want to say the majority of us who are faculty and staff, who not only welcome students to the university, we celebrate students at the university. This is a perfect time of year for us to be thinking about that, right? Don't just go where you're, don't be tolerated, be celebrated, right? It's that same thing, that students are celebrated at UAA. And I want students to know that even if they have had a negative experience, there will be more positive ones. There will be more positive ones. And then the counterpart to that for folks who are faculty and staff is to remember not to not be the person who poisons the well, right? One little drop, I'm mixing metaphors all over the place here. One drop of food color in a gallon of water or whatever is going to color the whole thing, right?
Yeah.
Even if it just changes the tone just the least little bit, it's all suddenly kind of blue in there or whatever. Don't be the person who does that, right? Don't be the person who does that. And in fact, be the person who counters that. Because we know it's human nature. People are going to run into jerks all over out there in the world, right? And that's an unfortunate thing. But by being kind, by being welcoming and celebrating and so on, we can do a certain counterbalance, I guess I'd say, to show students that they matter, that we're thrilled to have students here. And higher education was transformative in our lives, on our paths. We want to share that with others.
Yeah. Thank you. All right. And for this last question, I'm going to kind of put Meredith on the hot seat. So as a residence coordinator, what do you see or hear from students about their sense of belonging and or needs, like more specific for the ones who are actually in residence on campus?
Yeah, I think specifically this past year, we have been seeing, I don't want to say issues, that's not the right word, but like for instance, there was concern about not being able to smudge in their room as part of their culture, right? There have been concerns with students not feeling like the Chamai room, which is our space on residential campus where students can celebrate their Alaska Native, well, not only theirs, but they could learn about others, Alaska Native culture, history, roots. I've seen, this is I'm going into my 5th year in this role, 5th year of a 3-year position, figure that one out, pandemic. But this year, more than ever, I feel like we are hearing that voice on campus, specifically of students who are from or have an Alaska Native identity, who are not feeling as represented or as supported, and I think the positive side of that is it's really forced us to take a look at, not only policies and programming and the support that we do, but how transparent are we being with that support and with the things that we're doing in our efforts to support students. Are we possibly diminishing their story unintentionally, but still happening, right? So I think it's really given us an opportunity this year to go back and think about, okay, why did this policy exist? How is it, archaic and discriminatory without necessarily being the intent behind it, but that is what it is, what can we do to make this work with the safety, I'm sorry, I'm obviously speaking very specifically on the smudging now, but the safety, the reasons behind why it wasn't allowed before with fire risk, but that is something that doesn't have to just be, well, it was the way it always was, we're going to leave it that way. And so going back and looking at how can we allow students this opportunity to take part in a practice that celebrates their culture. I think that's, the biggest. We have students who in our quality of life survey that we give out in the fall and the spring, we have students that indicate that they, come to they live in the residence hall almost as if it's an apartment. They're not looking for that community. They're not looking for that sense of belonging. They are looking for a place to sleep, right? They go to classes, they go to work, they come home. And, that's in the back of our mind when we interact with students who clearly don't want to interact or don't want that support, but looking at the big picture of how can we still support those students, how can we still assist them with having the best experience, and maybe for them passive programming is more something that they could benefit from, right? Maybe they can't attend a program that talks about academic success, or they can't attend a program specifically held in the Chamai Room on Alaska Native culture, but at the same time, perhaps we can provide those resources in another way. So really, again, just thinking about where everyone's coming from in order to be able to serve the larger population that we have. Yeah. You didn't get me, Vincent. I don't think you did.
I'll have to work harder next time. So, Shonali, you've had a few hats here at UAA, and I know I've seen you somewhere and worked with you on something else, and it's just totally eluding me where that was. But I do know you've been here at UAA for 27 years, that's quite a long time. What would you add to what Meredith has shared?
I think I would add that, and I think this is especially true coming out of the pandemic, that all of us from the multiple roles, multiple hats that we wear, right? Mm-hmm. All of us probably maybe for the next year, 2 years, whatever, as we still kind of feel our way out of this, I think it's going to be really important for us to kind of tread carefully, right? I with things in the care team, I see kind of cases where there are students who are maybe their care report is about a mental health struggle or their financial struggles or their academic struggles. And we can respond in different ways. As Meredith was saying before, there are lots of resources or lots of great people to connect with and those kinds of things. So the institution needs to bring its A game with supporting students in all of the different ways that students come to us. I would say too that we need to do the same thing with regard to the people who work for the institution. I have, you know, faculty in tears with me on a pretty regular basis. And I think a lot of times, you know, sometimes a staff member may not really understand what a faculty role is like. And similarly, a faculty person may not understand the role that a staff member or an administrator plays. Each of us has our own role to play. And just because we happen to wear that particular hat, which is a really, you know, great metaphor in this particular case, doesn't mean that there aren't more hats under there, other perspectives under there, and so on. I'll give one example where I had a faculty member who was upset about an upcoming potential change in the learning management system, which is a very big and pretty, you know, but understandably stressful kind of situation. Tell me that I don't understand the faculty perspective. And like I said, I started teaching in higher ed in 1986. I have taught at 6 different institutions across 4 different states, private, public, and so on. I've taught online courses. I've taught face-to-face courses. I came into the work that I now do because I had had really wonderful interactions with my own students, with my colleagues, and a very dear colleague, I always call them frauleagues, there it's a friend and a colleague, in the College of Business and Public Policy, who's still a faculty member at UAA, said, in a given semester, you can positively affect the lives of 100 students. If you move into faculty development, you can positively affect the lives of thousands. And she was right about that. And that's precisely why I started moving into this role. But what I've seen in this role is that the hat that we're wearing sometimes comes with blinders on, if you will. And people just sort of see their one particular role, their one segment of the institution. And a lot of times we cast aspersions, you know, we go, oh, well, all those people are jerks because of this. If you wouldn't insert a particular race or a particular background or whatever it happens to be, don't say things like, oh, well, students, oh, well, staff members, oh, well, faculty. We're all individuals, right? We have that soft, gooey pink center at the heart of each of us. And so I think we need to be thinking a lot about perspective taking, putting ourselves in other people's shoes, and reaching out to one another. We can learn from each other's roles.
I agree. Thank you both very much. And I really appreciate you taking the time to answer these questions. And I guess we've got a couple minutes left. We can see if anybody had questions for you. Maybe not. They're all very quiet.
Or we were just that good, no?
Yeah, there we go. Okay. All right. Well, I will turn this back over to Dr. Chase.
Right. Thank you all. Great panel. We appreciate it.
Thanks for the opportunity to be here, you guys.
Yes, thank you.
Yes. Melissa, do you want to update us on the Jamboard?
Yes, we have a lot of stickies so far, especially on that first page of what are we doing to create a sense of belongingness to College of Health and UAA. Don't forget, there are 2 more pages of questions. We need some more stickies, some more ideas there. How can we support a sense of belongingness for students statewide? And what are the barriers to creating a sense of belonging for students? So I think we're going into about a 5-minute break. So that's some time to think about what we've talked about today and bring those stickies to the plate, or to the Jamboard, I should say, and go grab some water. And we'll come back at what, 11:25, right, Yvonne?
That's right. Yes. So for everyone, let's take a 5-minute break. And as Melissa said, add some things to the Jamboard, and we will see you back at 11:25. You can just mute your audio and close your screen, but you don't need to check out. See you back in 5 minutes.
Okay. Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Hope you've taken your break. So, I'll be taking on this next piece, which is helping to facilitate a panel with students. And I know we have talked about, and that's Meredith's words, that we should give students an opportunity to hear their stories. And I think this symposium will not be complete without weighing in on students who are really the core of our function here. So I will be facilitating this panel, which has two students, Vincent Phyllis Foeles, excuse me if I mispronounce that, Vincent, and Katie Lester. The third student who was unable to join today was Dion Ripperip, but so we'll have Katie and Vincent to really help us to get a sense of this perspective, the student's perspective. Now, I know we have your bios on the symposium site, but I would like to, give you the opportunity to describe yourselves. Who are you? Because certainly there's a way that how I describe myself in writing is very different from the way that I would describe myself when I'm asked to speak who I am. So if you would like, take a moment to tell us who you are and describe what sort of defines you and how you define yourself. So, yeah, so take a moment to reflect on that. And so I can start with Katie, and then we'll move to Vincent. How does that sound? Okay. Yeah.
Hi, everyone. I appreciate it. And thanks so much for having me here. My name is Katie Lester, and I am a junior at UAA in the social work program. It's been, I've been attending since 2020 and had a few different colleges and schools that I've gone to in the past, but this is my first one going through it non-visually. I am blind with a little residual vision and have a service animal. And just, working on a variety of different ways to help out a variety of different people the best I can, and obtaining the knowledge and experience and the continuous learning to help where I am able.
All right. Oh, thank you, Katie. All right, and Vincent.
So I'm Vincent. How do I describe myself? I'm an extroverted introvert, which means that I prefer being quiet and hiding in my own little corner. And yet for some reason, here I am. I am a non-traditional student. I went back to school at 45, 45 or 46. I'm finishing up my undergraduate degree. This is my last semester for my bachelor's in human services, and then I'll be starting on social work degree next month sometime. Other than being non-traditional, I have uncategorized autoimmune disorder. So a lot of stuff I get myself into, I wonder, why am I doing this? So I have some experience also with the disabilities portion of UAA and working with them. And I just keep really busy. with a lot of the projects and stuff that I do. On top of being full-time here at UAA, I also am a small business owner, and I also am president and founder of an organization called the Queen's Guard. So, and if you hear strange noises in the background, one of my dogs has decided to start dreaming. So enjoy that and feel free to laugh.
Excellent. Thank you so much for those introductions. So we're talking about belongingness, and what comes to mind when you hear the term belongingness? And I want to reflect a little bit on the sort of the keynote from Deanne, kind of laying the basics of what it is in terms of feeling valued, in terms of being accepted and needed and appreciated. But I would like to hear from you. What comes to mind? What does it mean for you as a UAA student? This belongingness. What does it mean for you? So, who wants to take that on? You want to start, Katie?
Yeah, I can start. For me, in a lot of ways, the belongingness is, like Anna mentioned, connectiveness. It makes a huge difference. Online has always been challenging for me because for the non-visual, having the atmosphere makes a huge difference. It helps me understand some of what's going on, but the connectiveness, communications is a key for me. Listening. One of the others is acknowledging that I'm there to a certain degree of, either faculty, staff, or students, and say a picture is put up there and there's some kind of description. So instead of making a comment, oh, that's cool, or I like that, and well, everybody else can see it, but I can't. So having that explained or acknowledged that something's up there or someone mentioning it helps me feel included. Offering to help or work with me, or just a variety of, belonging as being part of the group, and accepting the different ways that I navigate. Things may take a little bit more time, or the different processes, having items accessible, more in regards to usability, being able to actually fully access or complete something individually, working with me to help with that. So like, there's definitely a lot that goes into it, but connections and acknowledgement makes a huge difference for me.
So thank you. About Vincent.
I think for me, on my perspective, it's a little different in that as a member of the LGBTQ community, I notice some things a little differently. For example, I have passing privilege. Most people will not second guess whether or not I'm a cisgender male. I'm a trans guy, and I've been in classes where I've had professors who have not necessarily stepped in when there's some very anti-trans type commentary being had or something like that. And it can be difficult for folks in the LGBTQ community to hear, something like that. And I think when it comes to belonging, it's really about remembering that we're all people. And whether we're looking at how to interact with someone who has a visible situation, or something where someone you wouldn't guess what's going on, with them, it's always helpful to have someone in the class especially professors who will say, you know, that's really not the best way. Let's look at this something, you know, differently. My particular example on that would be having an English class where I had mentioned, you know, using non-gendered pronouns when we're doing papers, and having someone in the class literally say, hey, we've already given up so much for these people. Why are we doing this? And the professor's response was just, well, let's just talk about something else. So it's this thing of belonging isn't just about recognizing and including other people. It's about not ignoring them either. And I think that's going to be, yeah, I think that's my biggest statement on it.
I'd have to agree. All it is, we're not including that, but it's more of just acceptance of all you are, not just the differences or having it a certain way, but everybody having their own way of doing things and acknowledging how they want to be treated.
Yeah.
Or acknowledged. No
Yeah.
judgment.
I agree.
Yeah. And so, you know, one of the things that I really appreciate about the this symposium is this idea that, you know, we can do better, and that this is an opportunity for us to, you know, to one is a safe space to actually share and get better as an institution. And as you know, Deanne also pointed out, that it takes time, right? We all make mistakes and so on. And I'm wondering whether, you know, there are particular things that, you know, my next question is, are there specific places or times that you have felt that UAA has created that, that space for you, that space of belongingness and acceptance? Are there moments that has happened that could be built upon? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Katie, did you want to go first on that, or you want me to go ahead and?
You can go ahead.
Okay.
I care either way.
I'm with me not being a traditional student, I'm not really on campus a lot. I also live out in the valley, so getting into Anchorage for an event prior to COVID was not always the easiest thing. I am a pretty busy person, just in general. Between, I mean, we've got kids, we've got we're foster parents. We do all of these crazy things in my household. But one of the things that I do want to say I appreciate is that UAA has made some really great strides at trying to include people and let people know, hey, this is what's going on. And I think I've seen it more so since COVID, honestly, than I saw before COVID, where there's more emails that seem to go out to reach out to the student body and to do that. And it may sound odd, but I can look at that email and go, oh, hey, there's something going on. If I have the chance, can I go do this? And that feeling of inclusion helps with feeling like you belong in something. And so I really do appreciate seeing those and getting those. Sometimes, yes, they clutter up your email box, but when you sit down and you read through them, there's some really good things in there that are going on. And it gives you that chance, usually with enough notice, so you can go, hey, is this something I could put into my schedule? Is this something somehow I could get into doing? And having that option and that feeling of inclusion helps you feel like you belong, especially if you're not someone who's living on campus or someone who's even in Anchorage. It gives you feel like you're included. I guess that's my thing, is you feel like you're included. And I think that's a big part of it.
Listen, I definitely would have to agree. There's been a lot of changes. COVID's brought a lot of things to attention. getting around. I'm also someone that's gone to college many times, but this is the first time in about a decade. So at, in my late 30s, getting around, navigating, and for my early 30s is when I lost my vision. So it's been a new experience and change in navigating how I get about and how I do tasks. And one of those visions was, how do I get around? With COVID, it made it more challenging when you were limited on having access to certain different rides or having difficulty with um, just getting in or getting access to um, assignments or links or something that wasn't fully accessible with the screen reader. But rides, there's definitely been improvements. Working with a variety of different teachers. I've been very lucky and blessed to have teachers that have been really helpful, really working with me on doing things a little bit differently, trying to find ways to make sure I have the same access. It's, yeah, with a lot of on campus. I also don't live on campus because it was very expensive in navigating around, but there's been many incidents, in various classes too, where they have acknowledged or helped or described something or included, I should say, different ways to improve. I had one teacher, everything was online, but took the time to work with me to make sure I understood the topic, understood what he was teaching, as well as on the same page, because he was having to explain things non-visually and putting a picture in your head with that online. So those were some of the different, there's been definitely a lot of good changes, even though we're still in progress as usual. It's always in progress.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, thank you. So the next question, I'm gonna go back to Katie there and put you a little bit on the spot. And you described that you're learning to use Braille. And maybe you have talked a little bit about this, but what would you like UAA and your professors and others to know about students who are to know about working with students experiencing vision loss? What would you tell professors in terms of what would you want them to know about working with students experiencing vision loss?
Well, things that, with Braille, I'm still in progress and learning, so it takes a little longer time. With using Braille, I also, as learning Braille, it's harder to find it. It's harder to have it printed out. I guess not many people, not everybody uses Braille, but they use screen readers and other devices that help them navigate. But navigating is definitely very different from when you have vision. But there's also different ranges of the vision loss. And so that's something to work with. Don't hesitate to ask questions. Most people are willing to answer, and especially if you're trying to figure out what works best for them, asking questions is the best way to go. With the Braille, yeah, the patience, a lot of times for me, for schoolwork or projects, it takes between 3 to 4 times as long to do an assignment, um, to complete it. And then let's see. With that, I mean, a lot of it's just mostly asking and working individually and making sure that it's, it, you're not clumping them into everybody as a single group sometimes, because it's, yes, there's people with vision loss, but not everybody is blind. But how you communicate with them, definitely ask them what works best for them. Some people may say just verbally describe it, verbally give me directions. Others are, okay, will you help me with this project? Everybody has challenges with asking for help. And sometimes depending on maybe having meetings one-on-one with assignments and maybe in class situations, if something has changed, maybe check in with someone that needs it, to where just to make sure that they still have access, and what can be done to help with that.
Thank you. And I do say that, having had you in my class as well, it's a learning process for me, right, as well. So thank you so much for teaching us. This last question is kind of looking forward as we think about getting back to more classes in person, return to campus, and we know that building belongingness is neither easy nor a short process, but in the short term, what would you want done in order to sort of build a much stronger sense of belongingness as we try to relearn to be in the same space again? What would you like done in the short term? And I'll start with Vincent and then we can wrap up with Katie. You probably have said this, but in summary, what would you like done as we return back to campus?
I think for me, it's a thing of keeping up the communication, because I have a lot of things I do. And like I said, I'm not a traditional student. I went back to school, and I've got teenagers, I've got dogs, I've got a business, I've got other stuff. And so one of the things I've really enjoyed is getting all of the emails that share, this is what's going on, this is what we're doing. And so it allows me to look at what's actually going on and to be able to plan something. I think that's been really helpful in looking at what's going on campus. And then it allows you to feel included as well. And it's not as big of an issue of, oh, did I see that flyer? It's a thing of, oh, that was in my email. So for me, it's the communication, keeping the communication going is really important.
Thank you. And Katie.
Yeah. I would have to back off of that. Communication, I do believe, is one of the key things, in communicating in a certain way. But I would also have to say, reaching out to individual students, to seeing how they're doing, if there's anything that's, that they're confused about, or needs, what are they looking for, where's the stress, a chance to be able to take deep breaths and be able to focus on schoolwork, or find things and not get frustrated because it's hard to either find or see, or just to, make sure that they're in the right location. It just, yeah.
Well, thank you to both of you for this very engaging conversation and for teaching us really. Right now I'd like to hand it back to Melissa.
Thank you, everyone. What a great panel. We had great panels today. I love it. And it looks like, thank you, Meredith, for answering the question in the chat. I was just thinking about that as well. All right, so we are going to do a quick look at our Jamboard. A huge thank you to everyone that's participated. Oh, did I miss something?
Nope.
Okay. And if you haven't, if those juices aren't flowing yet, I know it's Friday, you're ready for the weekend and ready for some sun. This Jamboard is available to you to add those points as well. So what are we doing to create a sense of belongingness to College of Health and UAA? We're creating more opportunities for students to share their stories, just like today, Katie and Vincent were able to share their stories. We're bringing people back to campus. Yay! So exciting. We're having diversity trainings like this one. We have a student pantry, and I'm assuming that's the food pantry, the new food pantry that started this year. College of Health newsletters, more social engagement opportunities, offering hybrid and HiFlex courses. That's something that I dabbled into this last fall, and am excited to offer that again this fall. Including words of inspiration, holding all staff Zoom meetings via Zoom that are facilitated by different volunteers across the center. More in-person events. Definitely, although COVID has been COVID, but it's also brought something positive to the picture as well, which I think we've been talking about today. It is expanding our reach and bringing more and more people together, like having these hybrid type of events where we have face-to-face, yet including folks online as well, which again expands our reach statewide, nationally, and globally. So awesome responses. Let's take a look at the next question. How can we support a sense of belongingness for students statewide? Let's see, provide opportunities for diverse populations, to celebrate cultural diversity on all campuses in structured ways, cultural community service graduation requirements for all majors, continue to support development of new relationships, yes, and visions of interaction and structure between the Anchorage campus and other campuses. Some wonderful things are happening, and I think Jamboard cut the sticky off there. Invite students to participate in intentional online communities connected to a class and so forth. And then looking at, encourage students to attend, participate in community events. And then our final question before Andre closes out our symposium, what are the barriers to creating a sense of belonging for students? COVID-19, yes, a large portion of the student body commutes. You know, Vincent discussed that today as well. Perceptions about time, historical racism, intolerance, prejudice, and fear. Insufficient empathy. Oh, yes. Many people are unaware or don't even recognize their own biases. Although much work has been done, we have fantastic faculty and staff, and there's still work to be done with faculty and staff recognizing and stopping gender bias and racial bias in work relationships. From a communication perspective, many students aren't hearing about up and coming activities or know where to find them. We've talked about communication today as well. So getting the word out there is really important. So lots of great stickies, keep them coming, please. And Andre, putting them on the spot, is aware of these questions, and we can bring this as a committee as well, bring this to College of Health. And so, Andre, are you ready to close us out today?
Well, not really. And I hate to be the person that has to close out the symposium for the year. But thank you all so much. This is really incredible. And I want to particularly thank Katie and Vincent. You really inspire us to do more and to be better. So thank you very much for sharing your stories and your experiences with us today. I do also want to express my very sincere thanks to the co-chairs of the symposium, Dr. Yvonne Chase and Dr. Amana Mbize. And I'll also thank the committee members. Many of the committee members are here today. Melissa Klupak, Vincent Foyes, Linda Hernandez, Jennifer Lee, and Vanessa Mead. I really want to thank all of you for your contribution to this symposium, and also for all of your contributions to diversity, equity, and inclusion in your teaching, in your research, in your service, and in your learning. You've demonstrated that working together, we can successfully create a space for us to gather and to discuss our work on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And when I reflect back on the three symposia that we had this year, boy, those discussions were very enlightening. At times, they were challenging. At times, they were difficult to listen to. But that's why it's so important to engage in these discussions, even or maybe particularly when they're challenging. When I think about this work, I think it's very important for lots of reasons, both personal and professional ones. But one key reason is that it truly is embedded in the College of Health mission to advance the health and well-being of people and communities. But now I also think about, so now what? The symposium series is done for the year. What happens next? And I think back to what I talked about, I think at the second symposium, with the words of Dr. Pearl Brower, that this work is to be done by everyone. And I also think about the words of Deanne this morning, which I wrote down. We must live it, we must be it, and we must show it. So I really challenge you now to identify one thing that you could do over the next year to advance our work on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I challenge you to think carefully about this and to pick an item that addresses all three of these goals. Because increasing diversity without paying attention to equity or inclusion, that's not going to be sufficient to improve the health and well-being of people and communities. But unfortunately, we could be very diverse, but we could still be very non-inclusive. Or we could be inclusive, but still be inequitable. So I challenge you to think about a goal that integrates and advances the diversity, equity, and inclusion goals for the College of Health. And I encourage you or challenge you to write this goal down. So if you're a faculty member, this is workload negotiation season, think about that. Can you put something on your workload that relates to diversity, equity, and inclusion? If you're a staff member, it will soon be staff evaluation season. And during that process, we always identify goals for the next year. So I encourage you to start thinking about that. What diversity, equity, and inclusion goal could you include in your evaluation of something to work on for the next year? It is many speakers have talked about how daunting this work is, how challenging it is. But as I said before, I'm very optimistic that we can make some progress. And I'm optimistic that by working together at this time next year, our college will indeed be a little bit more diverse. It will be a little bit more equitable, and it will be a little bit more inclusive. I think that if we work together, we can make a significant difference. And so I really want to, again, thank you all for joining us on this difficult but wonderful and joyous journey. We have a long way to go. I think we all recognize that. But I really appreciate you being part of this effort and leading the way for us to achieve a more just and equitable society. So thank you very much for being here. I look forward to seeing you again. And in the meantime, please be well. Thank you very much for joining us.